I'm Coach Dave. Welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Come on.
Welcome to Coach's Corner today. I want to thank my sponsor, Farmer Strength. Hit them up at www.farmerstrength for your conditioning fitness needs. Also for our Farmer Strength apparel. Give them a look. Get hit with that Farmer Strength. Today, got another great Connecticut fighter coming out here. And, for you people who sleep on us in Connecticut, there are a lot of good fighters up here. And unfortunately, this man, he retired, which I don't know. We're going to talk about that a little bit later and say, I got Charles Foster, West Haven, New Haven, West Haven, Connecticut, 22-1 as a pro. Great background. Welcome to Coach's Corner, Charles. Appreciate you guys coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So you technically retired.
Yeah.
Is it technically or is it just for the moment? No. I won't put you on the spot.
I'm retired. I'm good.
You're good. Yeah. All right. Now, I know you've taken over another role where, initially I would have loved to have you and William on together as the Fighting Foster brothers, but I want to give you individuality a little bit and you each your own moment, but you're kind of taking over the training role for William.
Yeah, very, very different than what I thought it would be because you see things differently because, us growing up together in the sport of boxing, I was able to, hey, I think you should do this, do that. But now actually filling a trainer role, it's different. You have to work the fighters' mental, physical. I heard you talking to Shelly earlier. It's you have to know what makes them tick, when to pull back, when to push them.
But you got that family dynamic going on. How does that... Now, you guys were both fighting at the same time, coming up as amateurs and, both starting your pro career and in your pro career at the levels. You're his brother. Yeah. It's one thing when you're getting ready to fight and, you're watching from the outside as a fighter while someone else guides your brother through the ring and, you can give him that advice. But now you're his brother and his trainer. Is it a double thought process in your head when you're training him because of the family attachment?
Yeah, it's almost like a double-edged sword. It's like you have to know, I know he's my brother, but I have to kind of take the feelings out of it,
right,
and guide him in the way I knew is going to get him to the finish line and make sure that I get the best out of him during the whole process.
Yeah. How's, look, let's talk about your boxing for a second, then we'll come back into the training end. You've been around us. You've been helpful for us for fights and, coming through our gym, getting to see you and watch your career. For a lot of people who don't realize or ever saw you fight, very talented, smart, calculated fighter, good ring IQ, great record. I mean, you didn't lose a fight to your last fight, and unfortunately you were injured, which a lot of people did not know in that fight. Came up with a shoulder injury but you still muddled through the fight. Yeah. Still were in the fight. Mm-hmm. Okay. You fought a tough opponent at that time. To go at 22-1, why do you think it was time for you to say, I'm going to step aside from boxing? Because your career was still moving upwards.
Yeah. At the time I retired, I knew it. So by me being the oldest out of all the pros in the gym, all the guys always ask me like, you're not young, but you're not old. I never drank, I never smoked in my life. So when are you gonna know it's time for you to retire? And I told them always this: I'm gonna wake up one day and I'm gonna know it's time to retire. So I previously hurt my shoulder 2 fights, a fight before that one. So I had a fight in December in DR in Dominican Republic, and I hurt it in sparring. So then I didn't get word I was fighting until June. So we went the whole 6 months in training camp, trying to baby it. And then in the fight, it got injured again in the 5th round, the round I got dropped in. Never made no excuse, never told nobody, hey, I have a shoulder injury. Then we were getting ready for Alba Ramirez for international WBA belt. I mean, to sum it all up, the fight wasn't even worth that much. I mean, it was only $35,000 they were trying to pay me for, to get into the title eliminator spot.
Yeah.
And then I was sparring, boom, whole shoulder went numb. And that was pretty it. You know what I mean? I went home, I went running that day. When I went to sleep that night, I was like, I gotta wake up, I gotta pack my lunch to make sure I keep cutting this weight. But the moment I opened my eyes that morning, I was like, I'm done. That's it. I just couldn't take the mental stress anymore. It's a lot of mental stress I was putting myself through. I could feel by me being 30, what was I, 33 at that time, I could feel the promoters in the boxing business side of it aging me out. Like, giving me low ball offers, or initially they gave me that fight for 15 grand. I'm like, who do these guys think I am? You know what I mean? Like, we need to double that at least. And I feel like it was way more worth than, 30 grand. So, at that time I was like, I have a wife, two kids, a house. I worked construction all 10 years I was boxing. I don't really tell people that part, but at that time I just felt like I had enough of the sport of boxing, and what I had to put in, I definitely felt like I was not getting out what I was putting in.
You know, we talked to this a little bit in the gyms and everything else, prior to the podcast, and you said about being aged out. Do you think it's because you were a dangerous fighter to a lot of these contenders and these people that promoters were bringing along? Because look, I got to see you up close and personal with a lot of different people, right? I know your skill set, and from a personal level, yeah, I know you're a dangerous fighter. You're a smart fighter. You're a threat to a lot of guys that were moving through the ranks at the time. And do you think that kind of played into the promoters when they were offering you fights, or maybe not offering you a certain fight because fighters would say, "Nah, I don't want to fight Charles. That's not the fight for me." Or because in your weight class, there were guys out there that you know you should have been fighting. From that, I know that. I'm not gonna call nobody out. I'm not gonna say anything to anybody else. But there were people out there that, yeah, you in my eyes could have beat
Yeah,
and
100%.
moved up in the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, do you think part of that played into what these promoters were looking at?
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like they gave me the low ball offers just so I can deny it,
Yeah.
and then maybe they were trying to give us a fill out number, but all right, we want to double it, but all right, that's exactly where we want them to go.
Right.
Because I definitely feel like I was a huge threat to a lot of people. Because I sparred all the,
Right.
I don't know if it was a blessing or a curse sparring, guys like Marcus Brown, Gene Pascal, Edwin Rodriguez, even sparred Beterbiev. I helped him for his fight against Marcus Brown. I sparred a lot of good, David Benavidez, sparred a lot of good guys. So I mean, that was to get my own experience, but like, I could definitely feel I was definitely a huge threat to, a lot of people, and the promoters probably were trying to sidetrack me or not reaching out to my promoters that I had, which was Murphy's Boxing, and Lou DeBella was co-promoted. So
Yeah.
definitely could have been the case.
We're going to circle back a little bit before we get ahead of ourselves here like this. You guys, now you're a trainer, you're this, that. But what was the lure to boxing for you, Charles? Where did it find you? Or you found it? Where did that happen? And also, was it happening for everybody else, or were you the one that set the precedent for your younger brothers?
So the thing is, like, it's just has to be something that's born inside you. So I was always like a real rough kid growing up. Everybody, my friends to come over and be like, I don't want to come over no more. All you want to do is play fight. Like, I get hurt. I don't want to be here. But not a lot of people know that our father started boxing. He was amateur and professional, but he didn't get into boxing until he was 27. So like every other day he would come home from the gym, whatever he was learning, and he would teach me and Will. So I was about 7, Will was 4. I mean, it was nothing crazy, more like, the basic fundamentals, footwork, head movement, and that was about it with our dad when we was about 7. I had my first amateur fight when I was 11 years old. I was 114 pounds at 11. I was big. I wouldn't have another amateur fight until I was 15. Now I was like 180, but I was really like 6 foot at like 15.
Yeah, so they were finding at your age group in the novice, they were finding tough people for you, opponents to get. You couldn't get them, right?
No, my second amateur fight, I think I fought Keith Tapia. I don't know if you know who that is from the Bronx. He was really the Silver Gloves champion for the Nationals. This is my second amateur fight. So, I mean, so that came along when my dad left his trainer and he went to Louis Rosa. So when he went to Louis Rosa, we all went together, me and my younger brother. My youngest brother, Joshua, was just a baby at that time. I mean, he ended up boxing too, but yeah, the whole family. Yeah. It was kind of easy for us to train every day because our dad, he's the leader. He's waking up at 4:00 in the morning,
so you're
doing his run.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he led the way, and then we just picked up where he left off and took it to another level.
Yeah. So, your amateur career, how long? Now, you said you fought, you started at 11. You didn't fight till you were 15. How many amateur fights did you have?
60.
60 amateur fights.
45 and 15 it was, yeah.
Yeah.
I put a lot of good quality guys in my.
Yeah, definitely. You come out of a good gym. You had good people around you. You know, your pedigree was there and everything else. Going through the amateur rankings was the thought that, you know, in the beginning you're just getting your feet wet, right? Was the thought that you could maybe become a pro? Was that a conversation? Was that in the back of your head through your amateur career in the beginning, in the early stages? Or when did that start to click to say, you know, I'm pretty good at this and I think I got a shot to go to the next level?
So growing up in the Rosa camp, we had guys like Elvin Ayala, so he was a pro. My
Yeah.
dad was fighting pro. But my group, it was me, Lewis Jr., Nate Green. It was a bunch of us around the same age. So, like, we
Yeah.
all came through the amateur ranks together. And there was times we would just be, like, the best gym going to the Golden Gloves. We would have, like, side bets on who's going to be the best fighter of the tournament.
Yeah.
And once I got to, like, my second year in the Golden Gloves, I was like, man, I'm good at this. Like, I know me going pro is knocking on the door. It's coming soon. So about a year before I went pro, I think I fought Jaron Claybay. I moved up in weight to 178. I smoked him, and then I was just like, you know what? I think they found a heart murmur, and I was trying out for the Olympic team for 2012.
Yeah.
When they found the heart murmur, they said, all right, you have to go to the doctors, get it cleared. My doctor wouldn't clear me, and then that's when we were like, you know what? I'm ready to go pro. And that was it. So we moved on to go pro. I moved down to 168 for my first 2 pro fights. The rest is history.
Yeah. I mean, you know, obviously to be on the Olympic team or be thought of to try out had to be some honor for you at that point moving through your career.
Yeah, definitely.
And, you know, I get the aspect now of like, okay, do I fight on the Olympics? Which, unfortunately, boxing in the USA Olympics is not what it used to be. For me growing up, where it was, you know, watching, you know, Sugar Ray Leonard and that group coming through in the 76 Olympics as a kid was wow. You know what I mean? Spinks Brothers. So, you know, we've changed a lot there. Was going pro an easy decision for you, or was that something that, you know, you were like, when your coach said, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is the next step?
Yeah, I feel like it was easy. I think I was like 20 years old. I
Right.
started getting more stoppages in amateur, like closer together. And I started winning the tournaments, the states, the regional, stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
by me not being able to go to the Olympics, I'd have to wait another 4 years. It would have been like 25. So I was like, nah, everybody was on a collective decision. Like, let's go. Let's do it now. Good age to go.
Yeah, and I mean, look, you know, once again, Connecticut boxing, you guys came out of a great area, great pedigree of fighters over there out of the Rosa camp, keeping you sharp to get to the next level. And you know, you're working with those guys in the gym at the time, you know, and everybody else that Louis bringing around or taking you to or wherever the case may be. You're not, you know, is getting you ready. Walk us through your first pro bout. How was that when you got the call to say, hey, you're going to be on a pro card. We got you your first fight.
I still think to this day, I mean, maybe it's not true, but I think I trained probably the hardest for that fight than I did any other fight. That's how I feel, because I made weight a week early.
Yeah.
But I found out I was fighting an MMA guy. He was 6'6", my first pro fight.
Oh, wow.
6'6", 168. They said he could punch. I'm like, oh, man. So I remember I seen him at the weigh-in. I felt better when I see people face back and read their energy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
All my pro fights, all the weigh-ins, I'm like, I got him. Like, I could just feel the energy. So I got he was like, oh, God bless you. And then I'm like, man, we're about to fight tomorrow. You want to shake my hand for us, say God bless you, you know what I mean? But he came out to the ring and I was coming after him. I seen how big he was. I'm like, wait, hold on, I'm not ready to go out yet. But I ended up getting a second round stoppage in my first pro fight.
Yeah. I mean, you had 12 KOs through your career, right?
Yep.
I mean, so you definitely could box and punch throughout that. Now the momentum starts and it moves. How are you feeling through this process? And let me ask you this. Now, I know, as long as I've known you, I've known you working. And you working or you just boxing at this time? You're doing both?
First 4 years of my career, I was just boxing.
Right.
And that was it. I mean, I had odd jobs here and there,
right.
But, you know, once life starts progressing, I wasn't really that active. Like the first 4 years of my career, I only had 8 fights. So like I'd fight and then I fight 6 months later. Then I won't fight for like a year and a half. I won't fight for 2 years. I'm not injured or nothing, but the only thing that kept me sharp was that I was in the gym every day grinding and learning. But
Yeah, but how does that, now you're a coach, and that's going to be another dynamic, right? You as a fighter, that inactivity, how's that with you mentally? Because I know it's got to be hard. Like, I'm fighting, I'm not fighting. When am I fighting? You're young enough in your career, you should be fighting. You feel you should be fighting more.
yeah.
How is that playing with you as far as your training? How are you staying motivated?
See, now that comes from what's inside of you. I have like severe OCD in my life. Like,
Right.
like if there's a sock missing,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go crazy to find it. But I just knew there was things that I had to be better at. So maybe when I did catch the momentum of my career around 2016, 17, like
Yeah.
maybe those years of me not fighting, I was able to really work on a lot of the skill that, would get me better, because there's a lot of difference between skill and talent. So I feel like in my fights, I did struggle with whether to use raw talent or, use a lot of the technique and skill that I, acquired and taught myself over the years.
I mean, you're definitely a student of the game. You're a thinker out there. I could see, when you're sparring with people, when you're in the gym, and you're very attentive, and you're always quick to point something out to somebody. Is that all? And I don't take this the wrong way, because I don't want to discredit any trainers or anybody like that. Is that all something or is that you and your trainer part of you? Because some guys are just great fighters, but they're not thinkers who could see really what's going on during that fight and see openings. They're reactors, okay? Some guys are reactors and thinkers and opportunists.
Yeah.
Where do you fall yourself as far as that? Like, because I kind of see, you as that thinker, and you see it happening.
Yeah, because most things, like, it's all in DNA. Like, I feel like the way someone fights tells a story about how they act in, their everyday life, pretty much. So I take time to pretty much tend to overthink everything and think about everything through before I even dive into it.
Yeah.
So, but it could have hurt me a little bit. I think I could have got a lot more knockouts in my career. I feel like when I was in the fights, even during the training camp, I'll be running. I'll be like, you know what, this guy, he might try to, switch up and try to do different things, different tactics in the fight. But it would never come to fruition. I'm like, man, I should have jumped on that guy earlier, because I feel like they have more experience than me. When I started catching momentum with guys, and it never happened, I'm like, man, I could have stopped that guy. I was always, like you said, overthinking or very, very methodical on everything that I did.
Yeah. So now, taking this in to your brother, how are you transitioning as a trainer? Because, I was talking to Shelly, prior, and, your experience as a fighter, successful as an amateur, successful as a pro, doesn't always make a mix of a good fighter being a good trainer. Because fighters who become trainers sometimes expect that fighter to be what I was, or train like I was, or, you're not putting that in. Maybe you overthink it. Now, your brother, because you guys grew up together, you're in the gym together, going to stuff like that. You already know what his style is and everything else. And he's coming off of another trainer. Now you're taking the lead of being that trainer. Are you looking to change him, put your touch on him? Where does your theory of working with him come into play?
Put my touch on him, because he's already an established
Right.
fighter. He's he has a lot of pro experience where he has 20 pro fights.
Yes.
But now that like you mentioned it, I can't expect him to be me, because what worked for me may not work for everybody else.
Yeah, and I've seen both you guys. You're two different people. He's a water bug in the ring. He got more energy and you don't fight like that.
No.
You're a calculated fighter. You're gonna walk somebody down. You're gonna expose somebody. He's going, and he, yeah.
Yeah, but definitely, like you said, I can't expect him to be me, because we had 2 fights together so far, as far as me being head coach.
Right.
And
the first one you came in late on, right? That first fight was
we had just got together,
right,
for the fight he had on ESPN.
Right.
So like all the bugs weren't worked out, because after that fight, that's when I sat back and realized a lot of stuff. I'm like, man, all right, we got to fix this. We got to tighten up here. But I did catch myself a couple times expecting him to know or think the way I do because we're brothers. We grew up in the same gym, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We grew up around boxing together. We go on runs. Like when I had a fight, we'll go on runs together. Talk. We always mesh. But now it's different when I'm taking the lead role because I have to dissect that person that he's fighting. So I can't expect him to dissect the person that he's fighting the way I would have done it because he sees it from a different.
Yeah, fighters always look at it different than when the coaches are. You know that, right?
Yeah.
You look at, and I'm not saying it was you or him, but some fighters, they looking at an opponent like, nah, and the coach, we're not overlooking that. We're taking A, B, C, and D, every scenario that possibly could be, even though we might think that our fighter can go through that fighter in our head, but we're not going to give that card to you. We're not going to reveal that. Okay, we'll give you the confidence, but how does the dynamic? You talked about the first fight. Now, I know you work corners and you've been around it and you see it, but what was it like to be the head trainer in that corner? Where does that, you go now, you prepared him for the fight and you train him for the fight. What was it like from going from fighter to being the head trainer?
So I worked a couple pro fights before, either for Lewis Rose if he couldn't make it or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I had the guys win or whatever, but that one, the first one with my brother on ESPN, it felt different because we knew whatever situation occurred, all eyes were on us. Whether him as the fighter, me as the coach. So like, it definitely felt different. It felt like it was definitely more attention on us.
You feel pressure?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, especially when the bell rang and things aren't going 100% right. I'm like, oh man, here we go. But throughout the whole fight, I thought my brother could have did something to stop the guy, or it's just. You have to get that chemistry down to where you know when to push him, when to pull him back, because every fighter has different habits. Their feet are different. Their hands are different. Like I said, I can't expect him to fight like me because I'm a 6'2" southpaw, 175. So, but the way he fights is totally different from me. So, just taking those habits. And the second fight we just had together, we just totally toned everything down. And I realized some habits that he has, draw back on them, and some of the things he does, keep pushing that shit forward because he does a lot of stuff that's really good. But sometimes about slowing a fighter down to where they actually see things because, you can't expect, people to fight the way they do when they get to the upper echelon of, championship status because guys are just as good as you, as smart as you. You might be stronger, but you may be faster. So you can't get away with a lot of the stuff you would.
Yeah.
With,
You got to be more tactical.
Exactly.
As the levels go up, it's tactical war, right? Like, you both are tanks with explosives in there. What tank is going to win? Exactly. Who's going to exploit everything else? Now, you said something, definitely you fought at a heavier weight than your brother. You're southpaw. Yeah. Total different. Total different. Yeah. He's a 135er, moves around and everything. How is it for you working with a smaller fighter? Because now your style is not his style. Okay, how is it? And you know him, so it might be a little easier because you've been around him his whole life. So you see, how he was trained, what he does well, what maybe he doesn't do well, how he moves. So you already know that movement. But it's tough sometimes for bigger fighters to train younger fighters because of the way they fought. They didn't have to cut weight as much. They maybe are not as fast or as quick or throwing as many punches or, in the pocket as much sometimes. So was that an adjustment for you, or because you knew him, it was easier for you to kind of say, okay, I already know what I need to do here and talk about with him as far as what we're going to start working on?
No, for me, I don't feel like it was that hard. I mean, once you get the opponent as a professional, you look at them and you know what your fighter has opposed to what they have. So I feel like, just dissecting that person down, it was pretty easy for me to transition to it. I feel like it was easy for me, yeah.
The camps, training. How's the dynamic? I mean, you two guys give the brotherly disagreements here and there. Is it like, now you're his trainer, you're not his brother anymore. Is there that, hey, I'm not doing that, or you don't see it right, or whatever? Is that little tension there and there sometimes?
This past training camp was beautiful.
Yeah.
The first one, it was a little bit because, it's a double-edged sword. I'm his brother. Yeah. So he's going to be vulnerable with me the way I'll be vulnerable. It's not, we grew up in the same bed together. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, like, there'll be days where we'll be talking and we just wouldn't see eye to eye on things. Well, I'll walk away. He'll go. I'm like, you know what? Today, just go hit the bag because you need that person or the fighter still to trust yourself mentally. Sometimes I feel like I was downloading too much data to him to understand sometimes.
Right.
And in my head, I'm like, damn, maybe I'm telling him too much to understand what I'm trying to get him to do. I'm like, you know what? Just go hit the bag today. Stuff like that. But he's definitely more vulnerable with me because I'll see the way he comes into the gym, and he wasn't going to the gym like that since he was a kid. I was like, hey, you were acting like this, with your other trainer. Then with me, it's a totally different story. He's like, yeah, because I'm comfortable with you. I'm like, all right, so we got to get this together, because as long as we're on one page together, because I want nothing but for you to make it. That's it.
Yeah.
I'm your older brother. You're the fighter. I want nothing more but for you to make. I'm here to help you. And that's it.
Yeah, I'm your trainer. I'm your coach. I'm not your brother right now. The focus is on preparing you no matter what. And you can't have feelings about that if I get in your ass and say, bro, you suck today.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just like we're going to call a spade right now, or you did a good job today. Or I'm not criticizing you on what you're doing. I'm trying to critique what you're doing to see what we can change up and everything else.
Yeah.
So now, watching him, you become head trainer. What did you see that maybe you thought he could be better at? And, for people who haven't seen him, his last couple of fights, real exciting fights.
Yeah.
Real, and, his weight class out there's a lot of good possibilities and people for him to fight and a lot of high-level fighters out there right now. Where do you think the touches that you need to be for him to stay at that level and to move up more?
I think a lot of the top guys around his weight class, I think, all good boxers come and have excellent fundamentals. So I just had to kind of go back to the fundamentals with him. I think he needed to work with his footwork a little bit because he's so fast and explosive. He does a lot of things that sometimes he forgets about, the fundamentals of feet work, and he'd rather get you with his hands and then he'll break you up from there because, there's fights that you have. Like I think when he had the De Los Santos fight, he proved a lot of people wrong. Because everybody thought he was going to get knocked out a tough first round. But the way he broke that guy down, it put something in his head to where I'm going to break everybody. So 3 or 4 fights after that, that's his mentality. Like, I'm going to break you. I'm going to break you. But then some guys, they see that. So you're fighting better people. Now they're like, oh, I already know you're going to come to me. And he's just slick southpaws, and they decided to move their feet around. Even though both of those fights were really exciting, he was never, like, outclassed totally. I think he kind of beat himself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think, honestly, definitely, I agree. Not outclassed. I think it's a learning curve.
Exactly.
You're at a different level now. You stepped up a level, and these guys realize you can fight. Yeah. And the way you're studying them, they're studying you. So you have to take into account that they know your strengths and weaknesses like you know your opponent's strengths and weaknesses. And if you let them exploit them, it becomes a tough fight. Yeah. If you exploit their weakness, well, it's a different story at that point. But what do you see that you got to work on going forward now? Like, I mean, he's fought some tough fights. He's right there. I mean, kind of walk me through what your training regimen is with him.
Well, the first thing is working with my brother. It was like a no-brainer because we have the same work ethic. Like, I don't have to call him and be like, hey, did you run today? Did you do this? How's your weight? He just naturally does it because that's just the cloth that we're cut from. But definitely just keeping him locked in on his fundamentals, because his feet work has to be in place for him to get there with his hands, just little things like that. Draw him back a little bit because he loves to fight. That's him. Like, he's likes aggressive. To be in there. He's aggressive. He smiles. It's not a gimmick with him. I remember we went to one fight and he was laughing. The kid Avery Sparrow from Philly.
Yeah, Philly. Yeah.
He looked at my brother and was like, "You just doing that because you're nervous?" And I'm like, they don't know that he's really like that. Like, he loves to fight. So it's kind of like a pull and tug with my brother. I have to push him to, but hey, you got to jump on him, and sometimes like, hey, you're doing a little too much. Don't get ahead of yourself to where
you gotta find
you're getting
that
over your
balance.
feet. When that kid is in sync and he has his rhythm. There's not a 130-pounder in the world I would be nervous to put him with. Not one.
Yeah.
He's tall. He's 5'10" for the waist.
Yeah, he's big for his weight. He's always on weight. He's not struggling. No. Like some of these guys got to struggle to maintain the weight. Mm-hmm. Right? At the 130, do you see him moving up eventually or staying in that area?
I mean, he's 31. He fought at 132 pounds. He was 18 years old. I mean, he says he makes 30 pretty comfortable. He's deadlocked on saying, I'm not moving up until I get a world title at 130. So that's his goal. I mean, he just got ranked this month, I think number 13 by the WBA. So, I mean, the ball's in his court as long as he stays locked in and we stay locked in together. Me and the other coach, Mo Ortiz, which is Elvin Ayala's brother. He's the other coach. So,
Nice.
we all come together. We all think alike, too. All fundamental work.
Yeah. So, let's talk about the change of team. I don't want to get into the dynamic of why, when, or where, how with it. How do you think that affects a fighter with change of team at times? Because he was with a trainer for a long time. You guys were, fighters make changes. Sometimes in life, you got to make a change. For whatever reason, a refresh is not a bad thing in life anymore, where you see a lot of fighters changing up teams, dynamic. And you just talked about, you added Coach Ortiz, Elvin Ayala's brother, and shout out to Elvin. I love Elvin. He's just dog, and he's still, he still comes down and whips guys' asses in our gym too, man. You know what I mean? Definitely. But you're putting the team together. That's a major effect with a fighter right now, to have that strong team behind each other. How's that dynamic?
It's good. So when he appointed me as the head coach, he basically was like, hey, you have free reign, So my job as his coach and brother to make sure he's comfortable. So when I picked Mo Ortiz, I'm like, he knows my brother since he was a little kid.
Right.
We have the same philosophy on boxing. He has a really, really good strength and conditioning background along with boxing. So,
right.
I mean, I don't have an ego at all. I don't know that much about strength and conditioning. So if you have this huge philosophy on things and we think alike, then it meshes well. So me, him, and my brother's manager is excellent. Dave Dubinsky from New Jersey, he's excellent. So, I mean, the team's in a good spot right now. So after that loss we had on ESPN, we just fought in Atlanta and everything went smooth. We had a really, really good training camp, exactly what we worked on. He showed it in the fight. He was calm. He had good foot movement. He just exploited everything.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you said, it's an important part. Look, and I think boxing is that dynamic where, we take away the old school mentality of the hen trader does everything, right? Because they, there are guys that strength and conditioning, that's what they do. The fighter's got to be comfortable with it. They got to be comfortable with the team around him in the corner. And, I'm a big advocate as a trainer. I'm with you. I don't know everything, man. You come in and somebody sees something, or an assistant coach. Bro, I've been in fights where I had a fighter was vibing more with my assistant that night of the fight. Mm-hmm. For whatever reason, he was hearing his voice. And I was like, take him home. Yeah. I told the assistant coach, take him home, ride it. Because I said, take him home. I said, and I would feed little stuff that I'm seeing, but and when the fighter came back from the corner, I said, listen to Coach Benny, right there, boom. Yeah. Take him home. Yeah. He's going to take you home in this. And you know what? I think a good trainer, you can't have an ego. It's not about us.
Yeah, it's not.
Especially we're getting fighters ready to. This is the hurt business. It's not, we're taking somebody into the ring, whether it's an amateur or anything else, pro fight. You got to prepare these guys.
Yeah, whatever they're comfortable with, because we spent 8 weeks together. Whether it's me and Coach Ortiz and my brother, the job is to win. No matter how it happens, the job is to win. So you have to be comfortable mentally in there. You have to be able to hear us, and everything is smooth sailing.
Right, and then listening, going through. So was the natural appointment to you, or how did that come about when Will decided to make you the head trainer?
It actually surprised me. I mean, it surprised me, but it didn't. You know what I mean? Because I think he's seen me coach.
Because basically you're a trainer anyway, because even with your experience, you're giving advice, and you're just not running the whole camp out like that.
Yeah, yep. So there was things I noticed before he made the switch.
Yeah.
And I think it was around the time I had just retired. There was things that I noticed, and I called him on. I'm like, hey, don't leave this guy. He's really good. Don't abandon him. I don't know what everybody else is gonna do, but you stay locked in, because boxing, you have a short window.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see him get timed out the way I felt. That's my job as an older brother to, mow all the grass down so they can see everything.
Yeah.
So once that happened, and he made a decision, or he was given, a decision to make, and he was like, you know what? If I stay with him, I know what's gonna happen. Will you train me? I was like, I'm your older brother. I have no choice but to train you. You know, you're my little brother, you're my first best friend. So why not? Let's take this thing all the way to the top.
Yeah, so it was an easy decision. You didn't have to think twice on it.
I mean, I had to talk to my boss, the wife. You know, like, hey,
Yeah. Yeah, I get all of that stuff, but I mean, like you were all in right off the
Oh,
rip. You didn't have to
100%. No.
you didn't have to blink on it and think otherwise.
Yeah.
So now, you know what? You know, you got your brother working, right? Are you into this all feet in the ground training thing? Like, I mean, because honestly, like, you know, as a coach, always like to have people in boxing who have experience. You have great experience. You have the ups and downs. Like I was talking with Shelly, you know, your career has been a good career, but you've had challenges at a different way in this sport. Because you saw some of the back end of the business of this sport that is not nice. And, you know, you walked away from your career with a, you know, winning record, head up high, you know, very good reputation, good skill set. You got to have people calling you to train them now.
I had a couple. Yeah. I mean, I started with my brother Will. My youngest brother Joshua. He's dabbling in it. I think he could be very good.
How old is he?
He's 24.
Now
He's a little bit bigger than Will.
Are you guys working with him, or is he got some?
Yeah, he's one of them kids that are so naturally raw talented. Yeah. But he just knows the kind of work that me and Will put in. He's like, man, I know if I decide to go pro, like he's ready to go pro now.
He's an amateur still.
Yeah, he hasn't fought in about, I think he went the youngest person on the National Golden Gloves team in 2019.
Yeah.
But he just knows the work that he's gonna have to put in. I think it intimidates him a little bit because, you know, he's a 2000 baby. He's one of the new generation kids.
Yeah,
he's like, I gotta, you know, it's push me here, I come with him.
Yeah.
But him, I got another guy that me and Mo are working with, Troy Allen, you know, from the gym. And only other person I can see myself kind of training right now would be my son when he gets older because he loves boxing. I mean, I try to push him away from it, but he loves it. It's in him already.
It's in him already.
Yeah.
So what if you got a call from another pro? I mean, because, you know, realistically, your pedigree at your weight, you got somebody in your weight class or, you know, man, I seen you fight. I need, you know, it's a natural transition. Is that something for you to consider? Or, and I know you're working, you have a family, you know, your dynamic is different. You know, you've put together not only a good career, but, you know, your life and everything else is you know, moving along. So I know that dynamic when you have young children and a family that, you know, boxing takes a lot out of us. It takes us away from a lot of things growing up. But if that opportunity came along, I'll put you on the spot. What is it something that you'd entertain?
I'd probably entertain it because right now I'm in the point of life to where I'm trying to find redirection and, you know, rearranging my life to where no matter how much I try to run from boxing, not run from it, try to, you can't get away from it. It's
you only get away for a little bit. You know, I told Shelly, like, look, I started in New York, came up here, was not really involved, met Fernelli Feliz Sr., and we started kicking it, and I was very blessed because I was able to work with him, travel with him, meet a lot of people in my career that, you know, were mentors and learned a lot from it. And then things happened in my life where I was away from boxing, especially when my children were small. And, you know, then AJ opens the gym, and it's like, oh, you want to be, and I'm like, I was not ever thinking about, I liked being around it, but never thinking about being around it where we are now. Yeah. And it does. It's like, yeah, you got to redirect your life.
Yeah, redirect my life. And as a coach, as you know, when you take that role as a coach, I only have my brother. And when he's in camp, my mind is consumed just with one person. Yeah. So I can't imagine having like a plethora of fighters because you become more than a coach. You become a shoulder to lean on. You have to answer that phone 2 o'clock in the morning. You have to make sure, like, you have to get to know that fighter's mental too. Like, you know, not everybody, good fighters don't come from really, really solid backgrounds. So, like, you're constantly worrying about these people's well-being outside of the gym.
Yeah, what they're doing. And you guys know, growing up where you did the diversification of the neighborhoods and what these kids are going through. And like I said to Shelly, my first gym I started at was in the South Bronx, 152nd and Prospect. Was not a nice neighborhood. You know what I mean? We were keeping kids off the street. We had a lot of good fighters, thank God, over there. But you know what? Yeah, you're worrying about them. And even as I came up here, you're worrying about your fighters, right? Because they're not all very strong emotionally. Fighters are people see, oh man, but a lot of fighters you find are insecure.
Yeah.
They have issues that happen in their life for whatever reason that have, scarred them, molded them, whatever you want to call it. And like you said, we got to play, I manage personalities. I'm like a psychologist, a coach, and you got to know when, to kick them in the ass and hug them. Like I was saying I said, and not everybody reacts certain ways. You can't be aggressive with a kid who's not aggressive. And I mean aggressive, you can't be vocal or push on them because, like you said, maybe the millennials, they're not built like that. Yeah. They're going to fold on you. Yeah. Whereas maybe you got to know, another kid where you can push on him as a coach a little bit and push him to his limits. Definitely, yeah. But sometimes you got to rail him back in.
Yeah, some people can push fast to that finish line, and some people you really have to take baby steps for them to understand the process.
And especially when you're getting to know a fighter, it's like this. Like for me, I'm with you. I don't know. I don't work with multiples. Like, okay, we have our amateurs, which we try. But if a pro's getting ready, I'm not working with multiples of pros to get ready for. I did it once with 3 guys fighting on the same card. It's you might as well just go crazy. And thank God we had a good team around us, people that were able to help. Yeah. But, working with one fighter is enough to get him ready for one fight. Yeah. It's a lot.
I give Lewis Rosa credit on that because he has...
Yeah.
He had millions of amateurs,
like all you
6
guys,
or 7 pros, and it was
growing right through your career, right? All those guys that you name, yourself, Nate Green, his son, God rest his soul, right? You had all the other guys coming up in amateurs. Your brother, Felix, Elvis, right? Jeffrey Torres. I don't know. There was other guys over there, but those are the guys I know, right? So he's managing you guys as pros and you guys are dogs over there. I mean, when I first met Louis and we started competing our gyms against each other and being that's a fight. Yeah. Like when my guys would come up, our guys would like, who we fighting? We fighting Rosa's gym. That's a fight. You're in a fight. Yeah. I don't care. His least experienced guy to his most experienced guy. You're in a fight. Yeah, I said, be ready.
Yep. I think that's what, every gym has their own moniker. His is definitely conditioning. Them guys going to be there all 3 rounds.
Yeah. They're not they're coming out digging both toes deep in the ring on you, man. They're not backing up, and they're not doing anything. And I think that's a great testament to him and what he's grown, but also, you guys, I don't want to keep going back to the New York, Connecticut thing. That side of Connecticut, you guys had Chad was already a pro at the time that you guys were still coming up. I mean,
I looked up to him a lot. Yeah. Like when I was first about 16, 17, I didn't know where I was going in boxing.
Yeah.
I needed direction, because I'm so big. I'm like, damn, I'm a 6'2" southpaw. Who can... Perfect, Chad. So I started watching a lot of his videos.
Did you get to work with him a lot?
No. I mean... Yeah. Maybe 2-3 years ago. I mean, I think I sparred him maybe once, 2016.
Yeah.
And then maybe 2 or 3 years ago, we sparred 2 more times, and that was it. But I think around that time I went pro, he was out in Vegas. He was moving around a lot. He was still, doing his own.
He wasn't here at that time. But you know what? Even we got Nate Green was a good amateur, a good pro early. Now he's gonna be a good trainer. Yeah. Get to see Nate at a lot of shows, and all those guys over there, that are coming through that whole area was a tough bunch of fighters coming up. And now that the next generation is coming up as far as that we see it there. But going back to you and stuff, we talk about the training aspect of with your brother and everything else going forward. How do you balance it? How do you balance it with a family? Now I know it's hard as a fighter to balance it, but now you're not, as a fighter, you're responsible for yourself. You know how, okay? You know if you put your effort in or if you don't put your effort in, it's on you, right? If you don't run and you come up short, it's on you, right? So, and, your wife grew up with you as a fighter, knows that you are a fighter and what it is, but now you're a trainer. You're responsible to other people, not only yourself. How do you balance it with your family? Because you have children, you're married, you work, so you got responsibility personally, but now you got responsibility as a coach.
Yeah, so it's tough because I have my hands. I wear a whole bunch of different hats. So
Right.
like, I go to work, I come home, I do homework with the kids, or I'm cooking dinner. Wife, vice versa, she works from home, so she's still working. And I mean, it changed a little bit in the dynamic of my role, but not as much as the time I'm leaving. So like, the only difference for me now is I don't come home with one beat up or sore like, damn, I suck today. But I mean, I think it was easy for me to balance it because, it's someone that I love and care about. And it's my brother. So my wife was like, all right, like it's my brother-in-law. So it's a little bit, forgiving as far as like, hey, I hear you're going to miss this. But by her growing up with me, like you said, in the sport, then, she's more understanding to it. But it's tough some days, because I know he does the same thing. He works the same place, but he works in construction as well. So,
So was that a tough balance as a fighter for you also working? I mean, because look, you're working in your career, and that's a lot of things people don't, look, I say this, right? You had 23 pro fights. You won 22 of them. If you were a major league pitcher, they would have, and won 22 games at the major league level, you set for life. They're writing you a check for, right? But, some guys, you'll tell your story to your children or your grandchildren one day, and they'll say, man, 20 fights. That's an accomplishment at any level, whether it's amateur or pro. Winning 20 fights is, it's a pretty good accomplishment, I think. That shows a lot of resilience, and that is something to stand on. But, working and doing that, how hard was that? Working and coaching, right, you're not physically in there anymore. You don't got to get up and run. You don't got to go to the ring and spar and get up and go back on the job for 8 hours the next day after maybe you had a rough sparring session or, your last couple of fights you were hurting. How did you manage that with work? Physically, because you're in a physical job.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, mechanical insulator. So you're constantly, it's construction. New construction building things.
Yeah.
I mean, the only thing I always think about my career is that, like, I know I was good, but I never know what my full potential could have been if I could have been
just a full-time fighter.
I think all my pro fights, I took maybe the week of the fight off. That was it.
So you worked right up.
The whole entire 8 weeks.
So you never had one pro fight. You just had 8-week camp without having to go to work.
Never. I mean, like my first 4 or 5 fights. I mean, those are 4-rounders, But like when I got into like my big pro fights and I started getting promoted and moved and ranked and everything, no, I worked the whole way through. It just took the week of the fight off, and that was it.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what a lot of people don't see, that dynamic of fighters. We watch everybody on pay-per-view. We watch the TV at the high level of the sport where those guys are away for 3 months, 4 months. Mm-hmm. Their families are taken care of. There's enough money for them to focus on just fighting and everything else. And, people don't realize what it takes to get to those levels, to keep moving. Look, your brother, what's his record now? Over 18-2, right? 20 fights, right? Yep. So, and he's still working.
Yeah. Yep. Still working.
I mean, do you see if he gets a big fight where that'll have to stop? Or how does that play in for you as a trainer, if he gets that call, which, he's going to get a call somewhere along the line for something where maybe you guys got to take a step back and say, I can't do camp like this. Is that something that you guys have thought about or talked about?
Oh, definitely. So, we have Coach Ortiz where he has a really good strength and conditioning regimen to where he just trains people, whether it's on Zoom in France or if Will has to do a big camp here, I mean, he'll just do his runs in the morning, and we'll tell him to stop working. But hey, like, you know, our company loves us,
Yeah.
so maybe he can take, like, you know, an 8-week
Leave.
pink slip or whatever.
Yeah.
So he'll be able to do his run. He'll go meet Coach Mo and do his strength and conditioning. Then later we all group up, boxing session. I mean, I can't stop working, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. So you'll figure out the dynamic here.
100%. Like, now that I'm diving more into the boxing role of a coach, probably like in the next 2 years, I probably want to open up like a gym or something now. So I'm definitely leaning towards that. So when I start doing that, I get into personal training, and then now I can really dive into whatever fighter I'm working with at that time.
Yeah.
So
it's consuming you a little more.
Yeah, I try to. So there's amateurs at the gym we go to right now, and they gravitate towards me. They talk to me that I still got to pump my brakes. I'm like, man, like I love kids, I love teenagers, I love guiding people, but I know what comes with that, because once they find and they put their hooks in you, you're all in with those kids, and they're amateurs. And like, man, now I got to go to the amateur fights, and right now I don't have. It wouldn't be fair to them. I don't have time or.
Yeah, I agree. And you know what? I know what you're saying, because once you decide, like, unfortunately, you want to help, but you know you really can't help the 100% way that you need to help them, and it's an injustice to them because they don't understand maybe your dynamic or where you're at that point. And I'd rather be able to say, look, I can help you this way, but I can't take over the reins of everything else that goes with it, because once they see you're not really vested in them, it's not going to work.
Yeah, it won't. And boxing is such a dangerous sport that you don't want to be the cause or reason that something doesn't click for this kid, because boxing it's so emotional. I call it the easiest, hardest sport there is. Like, once you understand it and you put the hard work in, it does tend to become easy, but it's just it's all perspective. That's how I looked at it.
Listen, it's the building blocks, right? You're in construction. I often put boxing into a pyramid, right? Mm-hmm. You build the base strong, right? Right off the rip. The foundation's got to be strong, right? Because boxing hasn't changed in hundreds of years. The fundamentals of boxing are still the same, right? Yeah. You're training a fighter the fundamentally way that you learn, maybe with your variation and but you throw a jab a certain way, you throw a right hand a certain way, you throw a hook a certain way. Variations for fighters of what you do. You maybe can throw your jab 5 different ways as opposed to a fighter who can't. But you got to build that foundation of fundamentally of a fighter. Then we look for and we see what's inside of you, your drive, your heart. How bad do you want it, right? What you're going to do when nobody's looking. Because how many times in your career were you alone training? And I'm not saying to take it away from your coach, right? Your coach might not have been there at 4:30 in the morning when you're running. Maybe said, you know what? You got off of work at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. You still got to do your conditioning at night.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe the coach couldn't make it. Yeah. Well, you know what? There was a day that, you went to the gym. You still got to be able to push yourself through on your own sometimes without your coach being there. And then be ready for when the coach is there or whatever the case may be. And yes, as coaches, we don't want to take somebody unprepared to an event, whether it's an amateur, a pro, whatever event that someone's a sparring session. Yeah, I don't want that on my head.
Reputation too on the line.
Yeah, because we say to our kids, no matter what, right, you're going to be prepared. Because if I don't do my job and I don't prepare you, that's on me. That's my fault. And if I feel that I can't give you my energy getting ready for a fight, I'm not your coach for that fight. And I'm going to be honest with you, I can't. I'm going to tell you, I don't have it. I don't have the time, or it's just not at the right timing in my life right now, because I don't want that injustice.
Yeah, with I feel like with younger kids or 12, 13-year-old amateurs, it's pretty a good age, because you have the time to take with them to build them mentally and physically. I mean, because once you reach a certain age, boxing's a small window. Like, once I started catching my momentum in my career, once COVID hit, that was my demise. That was it, because I was ranked high. I got offered.
You were on the up and coming. You were on the up and coming.
Yeah, I got offered to fight B-Vol, and right after we was like, no, I just got cut. So my coach was like, no, you know what? Just wait this one out. But it was for $250,000. I'm like, damn, I'm about to take this. But I was cut. So I know that if I did take the fight, I wasn't gonna be able to spar. The cut would probably open up in the fight. Or if I was sparring for the fight, it was gonna open. I wouldn't make it to the fight. So he's like, you know what, sit this one out. And then nobody knows though. A couple months later, COVID hits, and that's when I lost my belt. I got stripped. I think they gave me like 18 months to defend it. So that window of boxing is very tentative. So you have to really make sure you're all in and diving in, listening. You have good people around you. Because I don't think I should have went 18 months without defending my belt, but that's in the past. But I knew when I made a decision to retire that I went 20 years hard, like no breaks.
Mm-hmm.
Like if I ever left the state to go anywhere, it was for a boxing event. So I know when I woke up that morning, I was like, I'm good, I'm done. I felt at peace with it. Still as a person, I'm like, damn, I miss fighting. Like it's a big part of me.
Yeah, but that's listen, fighters are always gonna miss fighting.
Yeah.
If you're a true fighter and that's what you grew up with and that's what you do, you're always gonna look back and say, yeah, I miss it. But is it the fight or is it the camaraderie? Is it the build-up? Is it everything about getting ready to fight?
I think it's everything.
I think
there's nothing like being under those lights, and you have to prove what you put in.
Yeah.
And just going against another man, like it's nothing like it. Like now, I feel like I look at life a little bit different. I feel like not there's nothing ahead for me, but like I feel like there's a lot less. I feel like I'm missing something all the time. I wake up, I feel like, man, like how can people go through life like this just being a normal person? I can't stand it.
You know something? Is it that, or is it because you were an unnoticed gem maybe as a fighter? Because I think people who really didn't get to see you fight or really don't know boxing, don't know too much about you, but if they had the opportunity to see you fight, now you talk about the Beeville fight, would you take that fight today on the same circumstances if you were offered it?
100%, yeah. Definitely would have. But that's another thing about boxing is that you have to make sure you listen to yourself.
Yeah.
If something does not seem right or something's not sitting well with you in the small window of boxing you have, you have to dead it and move on according to what's going to be beneficial to you.
Right.
So, I definitely probably would have took it or, switched some things up in my career that would have, benefited me because it's me getting in there. I'm the boss. I'm the one that pays everybody.
Yeah. No, I get it. You know what? And then look, I look at things like this, Charles, right? Things have a meaning in life of why you are where you are at that time of your life and what, things that happen, maybe you are where you are right now because your calling is a trainer. Not that you were a bad fighter or anything, but maybe your calling is now, hey, your experience, your knowledge of the game is going to be, like I said to Shelly, we're losing people that grew up in this game with, trainers like Louis Rosa and the area and the fighters that you are. We're losing that history of boxing.
Yeah.
Who's going to take it? Who's going to take it? Like, you know what? You came out of, you fought a lot of top amateurs, worked with a lot of top people, fought top fights, had a good career. Here you are, safe, not beat up, talking good, everything else. Take it and give your experience what you have. Give your knowledge to the next level of young people coming up and the guidance that they need because the guidance is not there all the way. It's not there coming up. The millennials, the YouTube people, the people in this sport, we're losing the true good people in this sport, true good trainers who have experience and who've been around the sport with influential people. I've been blessed. I've been around a lot of great mentors in this sport, and I learned a little bit from each of them and watched, and I don't see that anymore.
Yeah, I think social media gives people a false sense of the ego and personality. Like me, I don't think I know it. I think even when I came to your gym, I'm like, yo, what would you do, or how many days before the fight do you stop them from sparring? Like, I will always ask questions because I don't feel like I know it all. So I think.
But you're always helpful too. Like you're always able to help and pick stuff out, and I think that's what makes good coaches better. Mm-hmm. Like if we look at other sports, right? Look at other team sports, football, baseball, basketball, right? The assistant coaches who work with these great coaches, right? All right, I'm a Yankee fan. You got the Yankee hat. I'm going to talk about Joe Torre. Look at some of those guys. Willie Randolph became a manager of the Mets. These guys that are on the coaching staff, they end up to going managers. Look at some of these trainers that have worked with, maybe Freddie Roach or Buddy McGirt, out of these gyms, Robert Garcia, that you never heard about.
Yeah.
They're starting to come up. Why do you think they're good trainers? Look at what they had in front of them.
Yeah, the whole time, yeah.
So I don't think we ever stop learning.
No, you don't, because now that I'm holding pads, I see boxing a little different. I'm like, okay,
Right.
now I understand what my coach was telling me, because you see it from the outside now. You're trying to make the fighter do what you've been being told the whole time. So you still do see the game from a different aspect of it.
Right. Yeah, you're holding it from there. So, look, we're going to kind of wrap up here a little bit, and want to ask you, a question of here is like, what advice would you give to somebody? What advice would you give to a young fighter or somebody or a young trainer coming up in the game, with your experience of where you've been and what you've seen in this sport?
I would say to a young fighter, what I tell a lot of the young fighters I meet is consistency. Like, you're going to meet a lot of people that they want to box, but they start sparring, they get beat up, and automatically they're thinking like, how can I come and do this again tomorrow? But consistency does pay off. You know what I mean? As long as you're listening to the coach and you constantly keep coming to the gym. Like, there's a kid at the gym now that I think he lost like his last 3 amateur fights on a Saturday, but he's always back on Monday and every day during the week. I'm like, man, that's going to pay off. I lost my first 2 amateur fights. It's going to pay off.
Yeah.
But what I would say to a trainer is learn the fighter. Learn the fighter's habits, tendencies, their life outside the gym. You have to become one with the fighter.
Awesome. And I know you're not a big social media guy.
No.
I know your brother's on a little bit and everything else, but you guys are working on something, and I'll talk to him a little bit for coming up for some possible fights. We hope you give us the info so we can make an announcement and follow you guys. And, we really appreciate you coming down here, Charles. We look forward to working with you. And, I'd love to come down when William gets ready, do some footage of you guys working together, help promote him a little bit. A lot of love to our Connecticut fighters and our local guys. And, we will definitely follow you guys and, be anxious to hear on our next fight announcement. And, we wish you well and a lot of success. And, sorry not to see you fighting because, I got a special way about,
I mean, unless Jake Paul, I got the gray hair, bust his shoulder, somebody let him know.
Yeah, that's it. And, all right, so we will see you guys again on the next Coach's Quarter. Train hard, train smart, and we'll see you in the next round.
I'm Coach Dave. Welcome back to Coach's Corner.
Come on.